Okay, this is going to be take two on tonight's live stream. I'm gonna try to get back into my topic. I'm just gonna let everybody know that the new stream is starting. Okay, let's see if this is gonna work. Okay, let's see if this is gonna work. Okay. All right. I had to start the stream over. So, all right. Tonight's topic is going to be how to avoid writing Mary Sue and woke characters. And before I explain how to avoid writing these characters, I am going to give you the definition of a Mary Sue. Now, a Mary Sue is a character who is basically an avatar of an individual, and this character usually is completely perfect, lacks any flaws, and is usually used to be an avatar that a person has so that they can represent themselves in a fictional universe that they feel that they like. Now, this character usually, again, is this person's avatar or representation of themselves, and this is their way of interacting with their favorite characters. It's something that a lot of young, inexperienced, and novice writers do is they usually create this avatar character so that they can be a part of whatever comic book universe, sci-fi universe, fantasy universe that they are a fan of. And this representation of themselves can interact with all of their favorite characters, and this person can be a hero by being a somebody who goes out here and helps out the other heroes, and they can go out here and be this friend to the heroes. Now, your Mary Sue usually is this character who is always beautiful, absolutely perfect, and is someone that everybody likes. And that makes no sense from a story perspective, because if everybody likes you, you know everything and you're absolutely perfect, then what reason does the reader have to go out here and read the story? Because in storytelling, you have to answer three critical questions. Who is the main character? What do they want to do? And what obstacles are they going to face? And most importantly, why should we care? So the big problem with a Mary Sue is while they are the main character and they usually want to do something, the big problem is that they never face any sort of obstacles or challenges that will enable them to be able to have a full character transformation arc. Because what makes us care about a character is the fact that we see them with having to deal with overcoming whatever obstacles are in their way. And this is what really motivates the reader to continue reading the story. But when you have a Mary Sue, they never have to deal with any sort of obstacles because the writer is too emotionally attached to them. And the reason why they are emotionally attached to that character is because primarily that character is a representation of themselves. And because that character is a representation of themselves, they don't want to see that character hurt in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, in storytelling, a good character has to go through pain because it's that pain that allows us, the reader, in order to learn something. Because we can't learn anything from this character if they don't go through any sort of problem or obstacle or hardship, and if they don't learn how to overcome these problems, obstacles, and hardships, there is nothing there, one, for us to learn, or two, for any reason for us to connect with that character or identify with their problems or experiences because they have no problems or experiences. So how do we relate to that character or identify with their issues if they are absolutely perfect, make no mistakes, and can do everything easily? That's the big problem with a Mary Sue character is they can do everything. And if they can do everything, then again, why should the reader care about reading the story? Because this character can practically do everything known to man. And a lot of times it's really annoying because these characters, they come in and they know more than other characters who are supposed to be experts. For example, back in the days of Star Trek The Next Generation, what really annoyed a lot of viewers about Wesley Crusher, who was teetering on the Mary Sue level, was he would go on missions with the away team and he would know things that Data wouldn't know, and he's a lieutenant commander. He would know things that experts like Worf wouldn't know about Klingon culture, and he would know more than Captain Picard, and that made the character very irritating for many viewers because they wanted to see these characters develop, transform, and grow. They wanted to see these characters, learn how to solve these problems by using their skills. But when you've got this character who practically knows everything, they come in and they disrupt the complete flow of the story, and they disrupt the complete flow of how things are supposed to happen. So this character, because they know how to do everything easily, they don't help the story move along. We don't really learn what we're supposed to learn about these characters overcoming obstacles, overcoming challenges, or dealing with conflict because this character can easily resolve any conflict out here without a single problem. That's one of the big problems with a Mary Sue. But a Mary Sue usually is what happens when you have an inexperienced writer out here, and when you have an inexperienced writer who is caught up in their feelings. Usually they go out here and they write this in this emotional way. And when they write in this emotional way, what they do is they want to make themselves the center of attention. They want to make themselves the main character in a story. And they want to be able to go out here and interact with their favorite characters. And they want to be able to be the big hero in that story. And that's something that people tend to do with fan fiction, but that's not what professionals do when they tell a story. And how do you avoid writing a Mary Sue? Well, I'm going to get into that in a minute, but I want to also go into the definition. Well, I'm going to go into it right now. I'm just going to go into how do you avoid writing a Mary Sue? Well, one of the things you do to avoid writing a Mary Sue is you have to really take a critical examination of your characters. And that's something a lot of writers don't really want to do, especially the younger first time and second time writers. They don't really want to take that critical examination of their characters, and they don't want to really see what really makes these characters work, because what really makes a character work is not how perfect they are, it is their character flaws, because it is those character flaws that allow us to relate to a character, and it's those character flaws that allow us to identify with that character, because when a character has flaws, we see a person who is just like us. And when we see a person who is just like us, we start to connect with that character. And when you have a character with flaws, what happens is you start building the blocks as related to the conflict for your story. And when you go out here and you build those blocks with that conflict, you give them something that they need to overcome. So a good character is not a perfect person. A good character's foundation is based on their flaws. For example, when I was writing the Matilda Crowley character in the novel Spellbound, I started focusing on her flaw of being an introvert. And that flaw of being an introvert meant that she stayed to herself, she didn't speak much, and she was a very quiet and reserved girl who stayed very private. And in the world out here, in order for her to survive, she would have to learn how to discover her voice. And that laid the conflict for the story, because she was being confronted by these dark skinned girls in her high school who were upset that she was biracial. And they wanted to silence her because they did not like what she represented. And they didn't. And that was the conflict for the story, because the flaw that Matilda had was keeping her from being able to go out here and live the life she wanted to live. So that set up the conflict for the story. So she went from, in Spellbound, starting out with no voice and feeling like she had to stay to herself, and slowly started to transform throughout the story as she started to discover her voice. And that was what a good character does, is that they transform over time. They go from one point in the story in a certain state, and then they evolve into the state where they actualize their potential. So that's part of good storytelling, is giving your character these flaws, and those flaws allow us to see that character change and grow over the process of a story. And I'm going to leave a link to Spellbound, where you can see a character transformation story arc, a character transformation arc. This is one of the novels that I did. This was, I think, 2016. Yeah, 2016. But this one clearly shows you a character transformation arc in place. And you can pick up that book on Kindle and paperback. But it is a really solid foundation in showing you how to not write a Mary Sue, because the Matilda Crowley character, I focused primarily on her flaws, and the whole story was about her overcoming her flaws. Now, a lot of writers out here today, they want to come out here with these Mary Sue characters, and the sad part with our publishing industry is we have so many women in the publishing industry who are perfectly fine with Mary Sue's, but as I see it, has really eroded our comic book industry and our trade publishing industry, because, when you have books that feature these Mary Sue characters, they don't give readers a solid reading experience, because when we read a story, we're supposed to learn from those characters, and we're supposed to learn about life from these characters. They're supposed to be a lesson that this character is supposed to teach us. And when you have a Mary Sue character, it shows us that there is a flaw in the structure of the storytelling, and that because the writer is so emotional, they aren't thinking about those structures like their plot, their character, or most importantly, their theme. Because when you are writing a book, you're supposed to have a theme, and the theme is the message of your story. And the message of your story is very integral to your character, because if your character's message is not one that is cohesive, you're going to get this Mary Sue character who just never learns anything, and the reader never learns anything. Now, I have another example of another character I wrote, Colleen Anderson, who I wrote in The Thetas. And this was a story where I wanted to make a commentary on your feminism and the traditional woman. I wanted to make a commentary that your feminist oftentimes thinks that your traditional woman is weak. She thinks that there's something wrong with the traditional woman. And what I wanted to do in that story was show the flaw of the Colleen Anderson character, that she came from a place of being very judgmental, came from a place of being very arrogant, and she came from a place of being stuck up. So she was judging the sorority women as being stuck up and obnoxious, but the irony was she couldn't see that she was the person who really had the problem. And over the course of that story, she had to learn how these women lived, learn their culture. And then as she learned their culture, she then learned not only something about herself, but then she learned about her mother and learned about how selfless her mother was and how her mother helped all of these women actualize their potential and go on to build their families and their careers. But in that story, what I wanted to do again was show this flaw as related to this woman's whole belief system and have it challenged, and then show you how this woman comes to a deeper understanding. This 19-year-old girl comes to a deeper understanding, and that allows her to grow, learning a deeper perspective about people and learning how to work with other people. That was something I wanted to do with her character transformation arc, is again show that you can't come in here being so judgmental and extremely arrogant, because you're going to miss out on having great relationships with people who have different views than you, different opinions than you, and different lifestyles than you. And those people deserve to be respected because their value systems and beliefs, they're just as important to them as they are to you. And that was something I wanted to make in The Thetas with the Colleen character's transformation arc, because her flaw wasn't just being this feminist character, it was being a very arrogant and judgmental person who only saw things from her point of view. And you can check out Thetas on Amazon and paperback and Kindle. It's a great book. And again, it'll show you another take on the character transformation arc and how to write a character based on, again, another personality flaw. Now, there's a big personality flaw that I've been seeing going on in comics these days, and that is the woke character. And the woke character is just like the Mary Sue. The woke character, as I see it, is one of these characters that thinks that it is so self-aware and is so knowledgeable about things that they're going to show us all how we're supposed to live. And when I take a critical examination of your so-called woke character, they come across as some of the most poorly developed, poorly designed, and poorly written characters, because these characters, while they have their flaws, the big problem is the writers who create them don't acknowledge them. Hey, Chris. Chris Brown is the creator of Omega Black, which is some fun and fantastic manga. And I urge you guys to come pick it up. And I'm going to be doing some editing on Chris Brown's Indiegogo project for the Omega Black manga. So that's a new job that I have taken on, and I'm working on that right now. But you can pick up the first two issues of Omega Black on Amazon.com in paperback, and you can pick it up on the Comixology app. Now I'm going to get back to this woke character, and this woke character, what really makes us really not like this woke character is while they have this great flaw, the big problem is they don't acknowledge their flaw. And that's what really makes the woke character someone readers don't like, because he sits there and he thinks or she thinks she is absolutely perfect and thinks that they know everything. But when you take a critical examination of these characters, they really don't know anything at all. And that's what really makes people hate the woke character, is the fact that they come in with this very arrogant, very pretentious attitude, and they believe they are the best. They believe that they are the ones who know better than everybody else. They believe they have this sense of superiority. And instead of them resonating as the heroes that they want us to believe they are, oftentimes these woke characters come across as villains. And the reason why they come across as villains is because their motivations are primarily coming from a place of selfishness and not a place of selflessness. Now, when I look at comic book superheroes like Spider-Man or Iron Man, usually their choice to be heroes comes out of usually a great tragedy where they lost someone or something, and they wound up losing someone that meant something to them. This is what dedicates them to trying to protect and preserve other people's lives, because they've learned this lesson about life being precious and people mattering, because this person sacrificed their life or they lost their life in a great tragedy, and that makes them want to do better, and that motivates them to do better. For example, with Peter Parker, he was starting out to be a stuck-up, obnoxious person when he first got his Spider-Man powers, but it was when he let the burglar get away and the burglar murdered his uncle, it made him realize that he had a responsibility to use the power that he had to help others and not go out here and just use it to make money for himself like he did when he was making appearances on those shows. And Tony Stark was just a very selfish person in the beginning before he became Iron Man, but when he saw the sacrifice that Yinsen made with those communists, it made him want to go out here and help others by using his technology, not to just make money making munitions, but use his technology to improve the quality of life for others. So when you look at what makes them heroes, it comes from that place of selflessness, but the whole thing is the woke hero comes from the place of selfishness. And they oftentimes talk down to people, like Trex Colossal's made the point. They're condescending, and they think that everything is about them, and they think they're making everybody's life better by just being there. And that's not showing awareness, as I see it. That just shows us how narcissistic and selfish these characters are. And when you have a character, that these woke characters, the problem isn't the character, the problem is the creator. And when you have creators who are in this woke mode, the problem is that they come from a place of selfishness, they come from a place of narcissism, they come from a place of their own selfish greed. And they are writing these characters and these stories not to tell us a story of somebody who learned a valuable lesson as related to life, and they don't want to teach us a valuable lesson as related to life. No, with the woke writer, He wants to be able to go out here and he wants to be able to brag and show how great they are. But that's not what storytelling is all about. That's why the woke writers, usually their work is met with such disdain, because they are coming again from that place of selfishness. They're not coming to give the reader a valuable life lesson. They're not coming from a place of trying to teach the person who's reading the book something that will be valuable to them. No, it is all about their vanity. It is all about their ego. And it is all about them telling everybody how they should live. And what's really sad about it is most of these people who are woke have not really gone out here and lived any sort of life, and they don't have any sort of life experience to come from. And because they don't have any life experience to come from, what happens is they give us a very, very shallow picture of the world. And that's why people ridicule your woke person, because all they're coming from primarily are the books that they read in a college class or something that they read on the internet. So that really makes it where their stories don't resonate with us. And the reason why their stories don't resonate with us is because they can't really come from a place of that life experience to show us, hey, this is something that I went through. This is something that I had to deal with. This is something I had to struggle with. And this is something that I had to overcome in my life. And because they can't come from that place in life, when you read their stories, it just comes across as this preachy, condescending material. And oftentimes, when I look at their material, it reminds me a lot of the stories I used to watch back in the day on things like ABC after school specials and your shows like your Different Strokes and your many of your 1980 sitcoms, when they would do these very special episodes of them featuring things like child abuse, things like like Different Strokes episode with Gordon Jump, and episodes about drugs, or the Saved by the Bell episode where Jesse was talking about she was so scared. All of those things come from a place of writers who wanted to go out here and show how they were aware of a certain subject, but because they didn't have any life experience in it, and they wind up writing something that just didn't resonate with people. Thank you, Lord, for the donation. Oh, you're from Tahiti. Wow. Oh man, that's a shocker for me. I didn't know that John Haynes fans were that far out there. You're out in Tahiti. Thank you again for the donation. And he says he's a big fan of John Haynes and the newest John Haynes book. Let me see if I got it here. Okay, I do have it right here. John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, is out on Amazon.com. And you can pick up John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose on Amazon in the regular Mike Williams cover or the Josh Howard variant cover. So those books, I'm going to leave a link to them in the chat. But I'm floored to hear somebody all the way from Tahiti yeah, I know you're an American, you live in Tahiti, but wow, it just shocks me. So you guys can pick up John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. That's the regular version I'm posting up, and I'm getting ready to post up the variant version, which has the awesome Josh Howard cover. So you can pick that one up in the chat. You can pick that one up. I am shocked to hear that. here is the link to John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, the Josh Howard variant. And if you want to catch up on the other two John Haynes books, John Haynes, A Conversation with Death, and John Haynes, Dark Succubus, and the book that started it all, The Temptation of John Haynes. You can get all those books on Amazon as well. But when I look at many of your, what's going on, Yukasama 2001, glad to see you here. This is the first time you've come to a stream. But when I look at the woke writers, these creators, they want to come out here and all they want to do is talk about an issue. And one of the things that they love to do is they like to push some sort of politics. And the big problem with that is that really makes for some very weak storytelling, because when you make a character and all they are about is their politics, then there's, again, nothing there of substance for the reader to relate to and identify with. That's one of the big problems with your characters who are based on politics, like these identity politics. A lot of these characters are based on, like your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, who her only thing that resonates with people is her religion, or your Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, who is all about just being a woman, or your Snowflake and your Safe Space, Snowflake is primarily about being non-binary, and your Safe Space, who is just there to be this safe Black male. So there's nothing there that really resonates with the reader. I mean, they are just whatever identity politics that they are, and their whole identity is wrapped up in their politics. So we don't really get a character who shows us their personality. They don't show us their voice, and they don't tell us about themselves, because the character is so busy preaching to us their whole political platform, or basically the writer's political platform, that we don't see a person come to life. And that's one of the great flaws of your woke character, is they are so caught up in whatever the writer wants to preach to us about whatever issue they want to preach to us. We don't see a person. And when we don't see a person, what happens is we start getting angry, because all we see is this issue that these writers want to keep preaching to us. And that makes for some very tedious storytelling, because when you have a writer who is just preaching to you, they create this character who, again, is not identifiable, not relatable, and over time just starts to become this victim. And nobody wants to read a character who is constantly a victim, because when you have a character who is a victim, that's a character that really does not show us any sort of taking responsibility or accountability. And that's something that many woke characters, it makes them very irritating to read, because everything is somebody else's fault, but it's never their fault. And that's not a tenet of good writing, because a tenet of good writing is a character actually acknowledging their flaws and acknowledging the mistakes they made in their life, and then looking to do better in their life further on in the story, usually in the second or third act of a book. Usually that's when the character acknowledges, hey, yeah, I made these mistakes, and this is what's messing me up, and now I need to go deal with those mistakes. And that's one of the points I wanted to make in ISIS, the main event, which is coming out this Monday. The ISIS character in this story, as she is stepping into the squared circle and learning about the world of wrestling, she winds up grappling with many of the issues that were keeping her from actualizing her potential as a goddess. So in this story, Isis has to deal with these issues she's had for years. And this is why the story is the turning point for the Isis character. So when you have a character who has flaws and is imperfect, You have characters who can acknowledge, yes, I made a mistake, and now I'm going to take responsibility for that mistake or whatever problem I'm having by going out here and taking action to correct my course. So when you have a character out here, they have to come to that turning point in their life, usually in the second act of a novel or a comic or a screenplay. And it's within that second act, usually at the second plot point, what they do is that's when they start making those efforts to really make those changes that help them achieve their goal. Now, ISIS, the main event, is the turning point in the second story arc that started in ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, which introduced the John Haynes character in the ISIS series. And that was the start, really the start of the second part of her character transformation arc, because I wanted to do this character transformation arc over the course of the series, where the character goes from she was a teacher in the 20th century, but she left later in the mid 20th century, and then later on comes back to the world, and she has to go into the world of the 21st century. And I decided in this character transformation arc, the character who would learn how to be the student, and she would have to learn life lessons, and that was something I wanted to do because if you're a teacher in one life, the world changes, so you have to learn all over again. And the ISIS character in this part of this era is learning all about life all over again. And this was a turning point for the character in the second story arc. So ISIS, the main event, will be available on Kindle on Monday, and you'll be able to pick up the Kindle version. You can still put in pre-orders for it, and it'll be available on Monday. That's the official launch date for ISIS, the main event. And I wanted to use wrestling as a metaphor for the issues ISIS had with being a goddess, because she struggles with it, and because she doesn't feel that she's perfect. And I made the character to have flaws, because with a good character, again, you want flaws, but your woke characters, they don't really have those flaws, and they think everything that they're doing is absolutely perfect, and they think that they don't have to change. But the whole thing is, people read stories to watch characters change, and woke characters, they come from this place of arrogance, believing that they are so aware, so enlightened, and so perfect. And again, that comes from the place of the creators believing that they are so aware, so perfect. Thank you, Yak Diesel, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. What are my thoughts on the egregious retconning of Thomas Wayne's background in the Gotham High novel? That is something that absolutely disgusts me, because that writer, in their attempt to show how woke they are, shows how little respect they have for the source material. And it shows that this writer is coming from a place of hubris. She thinks that because she is a New York Times best-selling author, it's her right to just take these characters and change them to fit her story. And that comes from that place, again, that the woke writer comes from, believing that their ideas are better than the original creator's ideas. And it's a place that many novice writers come from. And those novice writers, they think that, oh, I'm writing a better story and a superior story. I'm putting a new spin on things, just like this writer, Melissa De La Cruz, said she was trying to do. But a good writer does not want to put a new spin on things, because they understand that they need to learn how this writer came up with this idea. Now, when I was younger and I started, in my 20s, I used to think in that same type of kind of arrogant notion. But as I got older, what's going on, Kenneth L? Glad to see you here. As I got older, I started to understand that I needed to learn how to respect the work of these writers. And as I learned how to respect the work of those writers, I started to learn why they wrote what they wrote. And it's clear to me that this Melissa De La Cruz, in her retconning of Thomas Wayne's background and Bruce Wayne's background, this is just, it just shows how little respect she has for the characters. And she doesn't have respect for the characters because she herself said, I never read a Batman comic. And the big problem there with this retcon is not just with this writer, but also with editorial. Because a good editor, if they hear that you never read a book from this writer, you never read any of their material, what they're going to do is they're going to say, I'm sorry, but you are not qualified to write these characters, and you're just not the right person for this project. Because when you're an editor and you are in charge of properties, you understand that if you come out here with a product and it's not what the customers asked for, and I come out here with a product like this, what it's going to do is alienate those customers. But what's been going on in your comic book industry is a lot of these editors, they want to try to pander to social media to get all of this controversy going on. Unfortunately, controversy does not generate sales. So what she wanted to do is go out here and say, oh, I'm going to put this new spin on Batman. I'm going to have Thomas Wayne marrying this Asian woman, make Bruce Wayne half Asian. And that's not who Batman is. That's not who Bruce Wayne is. And it was up to editorial to pull her chain and tell her, okay, you're just not the right person for this job. Yeah, I know you're a New York Times best-selling author, but for the integrity of the character, I cannot let you write this character. And also for your own professional reputation, I can't let you write this character. And with the story she was trying to tell, which is the whole premise of a Batman meets Gossip Girl, again, those two concepts are diametrically opposed to one another. Batman being a dark, brooding hero who is a part of detective stories, and your Gossip Girl, which is chick lit. And chick lit is very light and very fluffy. So those two concepts don't go together. And a good editor, he, like myself, is going to ask a critical question. How do these two concepts go together? How do you plan on making a Batman meets Gossip Girl? And that's what a good editor is going to ask them and say, look, these two concepts, they just don't go together. And the whole idea of this love triangle between your Bruce Wayne and your Jack Napier, that's just not something that fits the Batman character or the paradigm for the Batman character. Neither is this homosexual Alfred, who has been shown to be heterosexual in numerous Batman comics. But when I look at this again, this is an editorial problem. And this editor, what they wanted to do was thinking they were going to get short-term controversy, but they didn't understand it was doing long-term damage to the brand and doing long-term brand damage to the reputation of not only this YA author, but also the reputation of DC Comics. So this is, again, what happens when you have woke people in charge. They're thinking about whatever agendas they're having. Like Melissa De La Cruz, she wanted to make this half Asian Bruce Wayne, but what she needed to do was create an original character and then push that original character. But they don't want to do that because oftentimes your woke writers, they're insecure. And because they're insecure, they don't have the confidence to take their concept out here and present it the way I do with ISIS or, John Haynes or Easting. See, I'll take my concepts and put them out here, let the market decide on those characters, and let people make their own choices regarding those characters. So right now, I'm doing some freelance work for Chris. I'm doing his editing on the Omega Black, the Indiegogo, and I'm talking to somebody about doing a screenplay. But that's it. And I'm also working on the books for the 2021 catalog. I've done the first draft of John Haynes Taking Care of Business. That's in the can right now. And I'm starting work on Isis Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. So those are the projects I'm working on right now. And I'm hoping this year, if Bill can get me the art, we might get a shot at putting out the first SJS Direct comic strip, which is going to be an adaptation of Esteem No Good Deed. So that may be coming out later in the fall, along with Eternal Night. So I'm working on different projects. I'm always working on different projects throughout the year. So when I'm out here, I'm doing different projects all throughout the year. So I do, right, again, I'm working on Chris's script right now. I've just started editing that and looking it over, and I'm going to see where this goes with this screenplay. But when I look at this whole Batman situation with the Gotham High, that really, again, shows me that they're all about promoting their identity politics. They wanted to promote, okay, you wanted to promote an Asian character, but you could have just gone out here and just wrote an Asian character, put them in their own graphic novel, and let them stand on the merits. But your woke people, they are extremely insecure, and because they are insecure, they won't let a character stand on the merits like I let John Haynes stand on the merits, or I let Esteem stand on the merits, or I let Isis stand on the merits, or I let Matilda Crowley or Colleen Anderson stand on the merits, because I believe in their stories, but the woke writer never believes in their story. They want to preach to us something that they believe is so important, but they don't have the confidence to stand by what they say that they want to stand behind. And that's why many of their characters are weak. And that's why many of the stories that they produce are weak. Because when you're a writer, when you create a character, you have to stand for what you believe in, and you have to be passionate about what you believe in. Because when you have this message you want to get out here, you have to stand fully behind it. And that's something that Mary Sue writers and woke writers can't do, because they use these characters to hide behind because they're insecure. Whereas a writer, when they go out here and they create a character, they are secure and confident in their message. They are secure and confident in their story, and they don't need to hide behind things like this Melissa De La Cruz did with this Gotham High, where she wants to use Batman to be some avatar to represent her own personal life and her own personal experiences. She doesn't have the confidence to go out here and create her own character. The publisher doesn't have the confidence to go out here and create a new character. And again, it shows just a lack of confidence and a lack of faith. And the big problem, again, with your woke writers is they don't believe in their work. And because they don't believe in their work, we can't care about their work. Because, again, one of the most important questions a writer has to answer is, why should we care? And if you don't care enough to stand for what you believe in, to put your whole heart into it, then why should I care to go out here and read it? So that's why a lot of these woke books never really sell well, because the creators themselves don't believe in their own work. They want to go out here, they want to be published for the sake of being published, for vanity, but they have nothing to say, and they don't believe in anything they say. But you can avoid writing woke characters by simply understanding what your theme is, because your theme is your message, and your message is one of the most important parts of your story, next to your plot and your characters. I have to say your theme is the most important thing, because your theme is what the reader is going to learn at the end of the story. And if you don't have a theme or a message that allows the reader to go out here and learn something about things, then they don't really care. And again, the woke person or the Mary Sue person, they are approaching this from their own selfish motivation. And because they're selfish, all they're thinking about is the attention they're going to get, the fame they're going to get, the popularity they're going to get. And they're not thinking about the reader and what they're going to get out of the story. All they're thinking about is they're going to make this great story. People are going to love it. It all comes from a place of vanity and ego. And a writer shouldn't come from a place of vanity or ego. A writer, really, when you write something, it should come from your love of writing, and two, your love of your audience, because you want your audience to be able to come out of the story learning something. But your Mary Sue writers, your woke writers, they only write again from that place of ego, emotion, and vanity. And you don't want to come from that place. You don't really want to be writing stuff where these characters are perfect. They never make any mistakes. They never have to deal with any conflict. Oftentimes, if they do face any challenges, it's usually a jobber they can easily beat, like in many of the Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel comics, where Sana Amanat has her own personal avatar to be a part of the Marvel universe. She never really faces any really sort of real challenge or real hardship, or many of these what they call SJW. None of these characters really face any sort of obstacle. They never have to deal with any sort of personal issues. They never really have to really take that look inside of themselves and self-examine. They never really have to make changes to their life that allow them to grow. And that's the big that's one of the things they're not able to do, because their writers never really experienced anything. And some of them, they primarily are coming out of that place that I see many first-year writers coming out of and many inexperienced writers coming out of. And what's really sad about many of these writers is they don't have an editor there with the backbone or the stones to tell these guys that, hey, your story has issues, your characters are underdeveloped, your characters have flaws, they aren't really coming out of this story, with any sort of they're not coming out of the story changed. They're just still doing the exact same thing. And it's clear to me that you're not in a place where you're ready to write this. This needs a lot more work, and people are afraid to tell these writers this, because in today's comic book world, in today's publishing world, a lot of the people in editorial, they themselves are a lot of times fresh out of these colleges and universities. They haven't really lived any life, so they can't really tell these writers where they're going wrong. And that's why a lot of these writers are just coming out and just writing all sorts of stuff, because they just don't have any sort of people in editorial with knowledge to train them or teach them what they need to know. So I know what needs to be done. And again, when you have a character, you can avoid writing that Mary Sue by taking that look at that character and start addressing things like their flaws, because flaws are not a bad thing for a character to have. Flaws are things that allow this character to change and grow, and allow us to see this character, the motivation to overcome whatever obstacles are placed in front of them. So these flaws that many people who are part of the Mary Sue and woke crowd want to hide from, these are the things that people actually want to see in a story. They want to see this character take that look at themselves and say, hey, there's something I'm doing wrong. There's a mistake that I'm making. There's something that I need to learn in order to become a better person. And as I'm learning to become this better person, I learn how to overcome these obstacles, and I learn what I need to move forward. How did I learn how to write, Don? I learned how to write when I was 9 years old. I mean, I learned because my brother had these comics in his collection. I wanted to go out here and create comics when I was a kid, but I couldn't draw. So I learned how to make pictures with the words. So I made pictures with words, at 9 years old, and that's what started me on my journey to being a writer. So when I look at a lot of these woke and Mary Sue writers, they come again from that place of inexperience. And what's sad is they don't get the guidance they need from editorial. Because when I look at that Gotham High, that was something that an editorial should have pulled her chain and said, look, we're not going to greenlight this because this story that you're coming up with, it does not fit our character, it does not fit our property. But because we have a lot of simps in the comic book industry and the publishing industry, they gave this woman a pass instead of showing her the door. Because if I was in editorial, Mobar, in my earlier books, did I have to look at I had family members that told me things that they didn't like about certain characters, and I got feedback from readers that told me there were things that they didn't like about certain characters. So that was something that made me really look at those characters and say, I don't want this character to be, this perfect character, because that's something that I wanted to do, is listen to other people. And that's something a lot of Mary Sue writers and woke writers don't do, is they don't listen to other people. But I had family members look at those characters, and I had to listen to some of the readers who told me that, okay, I like this character, but I want to see something else. So I listen to people all the time. But when I was creating the characters like Isis and John Haynes, I always focused on their flaws so that they could have something to relate to. Like Isis, she's a goddess, but the whole thing is she has this humanity that is one of her great flaws. She has a great connection to humanity, and that's one of the things that makes her feel flawed. And also she has this feeling of inferiority about being a goddess. She doesn't think that she's perfect. She thinks that her flaws are something that she wants to have that are important to her. And they are important, because you don't want to be one of these super perfect people who thinks that you're so much better than everybody else. You want to be somebody who can acknowledge that there are things wrong with you. You're not perfect. And that's something that I wanted to do with that character. With John Haynes, I wanted to create a character who was a misfit, an outsider, a loner. And he was a guy who nobody thought could do anything, but now he's thrust in this corporate Hades, and he's the CEO of this company, and he has to overcome not only these temptations put in front of him by Lucifer, but he also has to overcome things like himself being this introvert, this loner, this outsider, and he has to learn how to work with people in this situation, which is not ideal, and he has to make the best of this situation. So whenever I do a character, I always, again, focus on the flaws, because that's what's going to, as I see it, connect the reader to the story. And when you have characters, you want people to connect with those characters and their stories, because they have to see themselves in the story. For example, I did a TV series that I wrote. It's not on television, but it was just about to be on television, called All About Nikki. And it was all about this selfish rich girl from Beverly Hills. And I wanted to, with that character, to show that even though she was selfish, there was a human person there. And her flaws was the fact that she had a big mouth. She always kept putting her foot in it, and she kept making mistakes. And that was something that resonated with a lot of people, because when I launched All About Nikki, it turned into a huge hit, to my surprise. I didn't expect it to do well, because the Marilyn book, while that character was a washed up celebrity, it didn't do as well. It got a lot of critical acclaim, but the Nikki book really resonated, especially with a lot of kids. And people liked the Nikki book, but they liked it because she was this rich Beverly Hills girl who was spoiled rotten, and she just kept saying things like, she kept saying all sorts of crazy stuff that would be considered super offensive, and it's not something the woke crowd would be able to tolerate. But that character really resonated with people because of all of her flaws and the fact that she and her father were working to make her work towards becoming a better person. So people want to see a character who isn't perfect, and that's what really connects people to people. But the woke people, they believe that because they've got a college degree and they have taken so many courses or they've got this great job. They think that they are the stuff, so they think whatever material they produce is going to be absolutely perfect. I mean, these people, as I see it, have never really gone and dealt with anything. Shrek's Colossal Infinity, wokeness is already starting to fade away. If we look at this whole pandemic, we're seeing the woke people, excuse me, becoming more and more silent, because when people have to deal with real serious crisis and real serious hardship, they they look at this woke person and they're saying, you're complaining about this, and people are dying, people are going through losing their jobs, losing their businesses, and they don't know when they'll ever be able to start their lives again. So we're seeing a lot of the woke people disappear. We're seeing a lot of the SJWs disappear. We're seeing a lot of the feminists disappear. And they disappearing because people really look at these people and say, if this is what you're complaining about, this really does not matter. And again, when people go through something that is really hard, they look at people with this wokeness who are coming from this navel gazing perspective, and they look at them and go, you don't have any life experience at all. So they tell them to sit down and go somewhere. Whereas a person who's been through something, they're looking at it and going, okay, I want to create something that makes a commentary. And the whole thing is that the woke person, yeah, it wasn't in the early 2000s. It wasn't even in the 90s. But it came about in the 2010s, or late 2010s, I'd say about 2013, 2014, 2015. We saw a lot of these woke people coming in, and these were these navel gazers who never really lived through anything or suffered or anything. And these people came into these positions of power, but they didn't want to take any sort of responsibility. They just wanted to come in here and have a platform to push whatever they wanted to push with these characters. They wanted to reinvent the wheel. And they came from a place, again, of no life experience, no real challenge, no real hardship, no real pain. So their stories don't really resonate with anybody, and they come across as really shallow because these people, they're writing from a place of their feelings, and they're not sitting there and having their work really taken out and examined critically. Now, someone who has had their work taken out and examined critically, I can sit there and say, okay, this is what I need to do. Like I sent my screenplay All About Marilyn out to some screenplay contests, and some people wanted me to fix some characters, but then some other people, they just wanted to, they didn't like the idea that the character was black. But I took some of what they said regarding one of the characters not having enough dimension, and I added a little bit more depth to them. So I do listen to people, but the problem is we have a lot of people who from the woke crowd, they think that they know everything, but they don't know anything, and they oftentimes want to push their narratives as the ideal, but they have not lived anything real. So that's why their stories come across as so fake and so phony, because they've never really had to deal with anything. They've never had to go through anything, and they've never had any real challenge in their lives. So they're sitting there thinking, I'm going to write this ideal character, but life is not ideal. Life is hard. Life is not fair. And life is filled with a lot of rough times and a lot of hard times. And these writers, because again, they want to come from that woke perspective of ideal, they don't give us anything we can relate to that's real. So that's why their stories often come across as very shallow, very flat. And what I've read in many of these woke comics, it just comes across as really, really preachy. And everything is about preaching to the reader. And readers don't want to be preached to. When readers go out here and pick up a book like John Haynes' The Man with Nothing to Lose, they want to escape, and they want to go into that story, having to get away from their problems, getting away from their lives. And they want to get away, and they want to just be able to sit back and enjoy a book for whether it be an hour or 2 hours, with these characters, and they want to be able to enjoy themselves, but they can't do that with a woke story because the writer is sitting there screaming at them. And a good writer, they don't scream at you. What they do is present their story, present their message, and once they present their story and their message, they let you draw your own conclusion. But the woke writer, what they want to do is tell you that, preach to you, and then after they finish preaching to you, they want to continue shouting at you because they not only want to preach their message, they want you to agree with their message and they want to convince you. And again, that force of trying to convince you comes from a place of insecurity, because a confident writer, once they have finished their story, they put a period at the end of that story, and whether you get it or not, it's not their problem. Excuse me. What they do is say, okay, I presented my message, I've presented my argument, and you draw your own observations and your own conclusions. And once you have drawn your own observations and your own conclusions, whatever you get out of the book, you get out of the book. Now, I may have certain themes that I want you to understand. I may have a certain message, but what you get out of the book is not based on me. It is based on you. And that's something that a writer does because they have the confidence, again, in their work, but the woke writer doesn't have the confidence in their work. And you avoid being a woke writer by building up a thick skin, because you're going to have to deal with a lot of criticism if you are out here in the business of publishing and writing. You're going to have to deal with a lot of criticism. You're going to have to deal with people who don't like your work. You're going to have to deal with people who have issues here and there with your work. You're going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to let it either roll off you, or you have to really take a critical examination and say, okay, maybe there was something here, but you don't really let it be to the point where you're getting defensive and emotional, because you don't have a right to tell the reader what they should think about your work. And Mobar 7170 asks a question. So how can a writer make this work in fiction? I mean that escapism, so that we can't avoid these types of characters or themes. Yeah. You can avoid writing those, again, those Mary Sues, by really taking, again, a look at your message and your theme, because that's because part of that theme is showing us how this character is going to change and transform. And what makes them change and transform is the flaws they have in the beginning of the story. And with the woke characters, again, it comes from that writer's lack of confidence. So you're not here trying to preach to somebody to the point where you're trying to convince them, because that's what the woke writer tries to do. A writer who writes to escape, they already know what their theme is, they know what their message is, and they let the story stand on their merits. So a writer makes the things work by having that, by one, believing in what they write, two, having the confidence to stand by what they write, and three, really taking that look and saying, hey, what is the theme of my book? What is the message of my book? And once they've done that, the reader can just escape, because the world you're creating is about you eventually letting people know whatever this message is. And that's the end of the story. You just have to have that confidence. But I don't see that confidence because we have a lot of insecure people out here. And because we have insecure people, they don't know how to make the escapism part work, because they sit there and all they want to do is scream at you, when a writer does not scream at the reader. They just put their story up there, and if they like it, they like it, and if they don't, they don't. But we're not seeing that these days, because we have a lot of writers out here. They went to college, and they learned some things about English, they learned some things about literature, but they didn't really learn the concepts that were intrinsic to story models, story paradigms, and they didn't learn anything about characters and characterizations. I mean, things that I learned reading books like Sid Field's Screenplay and Robert McKee's Story, a lot of these writers, they didn't learn, even though they went to these universities, because a lot of the woke writers, they love to talk about university. And a lot of the Mary Sue writers, they like to do that. They like to get defensive like that. But they didn't learn the things about this business, and they didn't learn that people aren't going to buy your stories to just see you scream at them and preach at them. They are coming because they want to break from their lives. I mean, when I go to the comic book store when I was a teenager, I came to the comic book store because I wanted to see these superheroes, and I wanted to be able to read these books for 30, 45 minutes, to get away from my life in the South Bronx and the ghetto. And people, that's what they want when they pick up, a book like a John Hayes. They want to see the man who rules the world taking on this man with nothing to lose, and they want to be able to escape to that world, and they want to be able to see that, or they want to go into like Isis, who goes where she's needed and takes on different bad guys. That's what they want to see. They want to be able to go out here and be able to escape to these worlds and be able to take that break from their lives. Because a lot of people out here, what they don't understand is like the woke writers, because again, they're coming from that place of selfishness. They don't understand people, they're going to these jobs, they're having a hard day. And sometimes that book that they pick up, that comic book, that book like I produce, like John Haynes and stuff like that, these books are sometimes the thing that can make a person's day. And when they hear, oh, this book is coming out, they're looking forward to that, because that means they can take a break from a job that's really hard or a family situation that's hard, and they want to get away from their lives. But what the woke people want to do, and what they want to do, is just keep bringing a problem to you. But a good writer, I don't want to bring a problem to you. When I write a story, I want to give you a solution. And like a story, for example, with John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose, I was doing a story about overcoming a bully. And I also did that with Spellbound and Isis, the Ultimate Fight. That was the message that I was trying to tell in these stories. But the whole thing is that these people, because they're selfish, they're not thinking about what is the reader going to get out of it in addition to the escape. They want to bring you a problem, but you never bring a reader a problem. You always bring them a solution, because the solution is the reason why they're out here buying the work. So this is the big problem with the woke crowd, is they want to sit there and they want to say, I'm going to keep telling you about this problem, tell you about this problem, tell you about this racism, about this ist or this phobe. But I didn't come here to hear about an ist or a phobe or whatever thing. I came here so that I could see something where I see this hero going out here, taking on the bad guys, beating the bad guys, and going on with their life. That's what I came here for. But you want to give me a problem. And again, good writers never give you a problem. Good writers give you a solution. And that's something that a woke writer isn't doing. They just want to keep complaining about the problem. But the objective of buying books is, one, to get that escape from your life, and two, to get a solution to whatever problem you're having in your own life, and to take a break and just be able to enjoy a couple of minutes away. Because most people, when they read these books, they read them either on the train, or they read them in the bathtub, or they read them in their spare time. And they don't want you continuing to give them problems, because if they want problems, they'll go watch the 6 o'clock news. People go to buy a book not to get somebody pushing a political platform or political agenda. They want to be able to say, hey, I get to go watch the good guys take on the bad guys, and I get to get a laugh, here or there. I mean, when I did All About Nikki, I just wanted to give people a laugh with this rich, spoiled girl from Beverly Hills who just keeps making all of these social errors, and be able for us to laugh at. While we're laughing at her social errors, we're learning, okay, maybe this is not how we treat other people. It came from the whole place of do unto others as we have them do unto you. And the character, while she was supposed to be mean, was meant to show us, this is how we're supposed to treat. Do we really want to treat each other like this? And as this child learns not to treat others like this, we learn something as well. So when you're out here, again, it's just about being selfless in your storytelling And again, Mary Sue writers, they don't come from that because it's all about them. It's all about their story. It's all about them being in the face of their favorite characters. And when you have a Mary Sue, it doesn't really resonate with people because she's a narcissistic character and she's just all about her and what she's getting out of this, but the reader isn't getting the entertaining story that they were promised or they thought they were going to receive. Instead, all we get is this Mary Sue character talking about how perfect she is, how great she is, and how she can do absolutely everything. And if you can do everything, then why should I care to read your story? Why should I care? Because I came here to see these heroes solve a problem, and you're not solving any problem in a constructive manner where I'm going to learn how these characters overcome their personal issues with each other, the problems that they're having. I'm not learning anything. All I'm seeing is you bragging about how great you are. And hearing you talk about how great you are, that's not what the reader is paying for. And that's not something people, again, are interested in putting money down to go see. So the Mary Sue writers, again, they come from that place, as I see it, again, of insecurity, because this is all about them and them self-aggrandizing and thinking, I'm so great. But really, the reason why they want this character to be great is because they feel inadequate about themselves. And because they feel inadequate, they need to create this perfect character. And that's not what a good creator does. A good creator understands that they're not perfect, and they understand that the whole point of this character being created is about showing that, yes, this character is not perfect, but this character wants to work on whatever issue that they can have so that they can become a better person, not a perfect person, because nobody is perfect but Jesus, and everybody out here is imperfect. And there's nothing wrong with an imperfect character. Imperfect characters, they allow us to learn lessons about ourselves. They allow us to learn lessons about life, and they allow us to really take a look at life and really think about how precious it is, how great it is, and how we've been blessed with this great opportunity to learn something about life that will allow us to be better people. And the ISIS graphic novel is going to be based on All That Glitters. So Mobar is going to be, if I ever get enough money to do it, because I'm looking to try to do it with Patreon and pledges, but if I ever get it published, it would be featuring ISIS versus Golden Shine. I wanted to do it as a test to see if there was an audience for, comics. So if I ever get it going, we'll see what happens. But it's going to be an adaptation of All That Glitters, so that I can show people that you can take a story from the superhero prose and turn it into a comic. I mean, I still have the script. Script is still sitting there. I'm just waiting for the funding to come through so I can get the art going. But that's where that's at. But I'm waiting for Bill to get back to me with the No Good Deed art, and we'll see what happens with that. Because I sent him the script a couple of months ago, and he's got other projects, so I'm still waiting for him to get back to me on that. Also waiting for him to get back to me on the cover for Blast from the Past, which is the fall book, which is the Easteen book, which would feature the No Good Deed art and the No Good Deed story. So that's what I'm working on. I'm just doing, it's a 9-page story just to see if people want more SJS Direct, if people like SJS Direct comics. And if it does well, I'll do more, and I'd love to do more. I wanted to do the graphic novel, but I couldn't raise the money for it with the Indiegogo. But that's something that I'm hoping to do sooner rather than later. But I'm working on other things, like The Temptation of John Haynes is going to get a cover refresh soon. Maybe next year or later this year, there will be a refresh on this cover. Everybody said this was a lousy book cover, but I'm getting ready to replace this. I talked to Mike about it, so we're gonna replace this cover finally after 10 years. So Temptation of John Hayes will be getting a new cover soon that fits more in line with these covers and allows me to be able to synergize and be able to, sell all of the John Hayes books because they'll have the same art and the same consistent art. So that's what I want to do here, is be able to have all the books consistent. So that's part of that plan. But I am working on trying to get that out there. But the ISIS is just meant to be something to see if there's an audience there, and if I can do more. Now, if I can get that following and that readership, then I would probably do an original story. In order to do the graphic novel, I would probably need about $17,000-$18,000 to do that, because I have to pay artists, I have to pay for letters, I have to pay for colors, I have to pay to print the books. It's very expensive, and comics are not cheap. I mean, artists, they work anywhere from, again, $100 to $150 a page, and then you have to pay letterers who work from $20 to $50 a page. If you get a really good letterer, like Chris is talking about, getting a really good letterer, because a good letterer knows how to put the captions and the balloons there and really make the page flow. And you also need a good colorist if you're going to do a color, and that's usually $80 to $110 a page. So it's really expensive. So I wanted to do the Indiegogo to do it. I thought that because there were so many Indiegogos getting funded, I'd be able to do it. Unfortunately, I'm going to regroup. So it's just a matter of time. So I want to do a graphic novel. Would love to do one. Would love to get it out there, but it's just okay. Well, I would love to have it, but it's really a lot of work. So I'm just sticking with my superhero prose right now, and superhero prose works right now because I just want people to get to know the characters and see what's great about the characters. I know it's sort of like Pulp Fiction, like the Doc Savages and the Shadows, but that's what I can do right now. I would love to do a comic. We'll see what happens, but right now, it would be about 64 pages. It's not going to be that big. It might be about the same length as one of these right here, but that's about the length of the adaptation, because the All That Glitters story is about 51 and No Good Deed is about 9. So it's about, with the inserts and stuff, it's going to be about 64 pages. Again, it's just to give a feel, because I didn't want to start out with a bigger story like Main Event, because a book like Main Event, with all the pages, this would probably be about 150, 160 if I did it as a comic. So I wanted to start out with a smaller story to just see if I could get a script done, one. And two, I wanted to see if I could get the script done in a way that could allow us to really tell the story. So that's what I wanted to do with All That Glitters, was test things out, see how an ISIS story would play in pictures, because writing comics is completely different than writing a novel or superhero prose, and they're very different from writing manga. They all have different paradigms, different models, and you have to really know what you're doing in each of them. So I just don't. It's not. I designed this one to be kind of on the small side because I wanted to, again, go with the test, but I don't want it to be, trying to raise funds to pay for 200 pages because that number would be astronomical. I mean, it's already very expensive as it is. Now, some people say you could do it for 6,000 with colors and everything, but I don't know that artist record or that reputation, but I really wanted to do it, a real quality job and really have a good quality comic and be able to get that quality comic out here. So that's what the high number is. Now, if there's a lower number, I will go for that, but we'll see what happens. So I would love to, do a graphic novel and get that out there for everybody, because I believe that if I did an ISIS and a John Hayes comic, people would really go for it. But I want to see, but it's one of those long-term things that I have to plan. But I'm hoping everybody learned something, about Mary Sue's, and learn something about the things that make these characters bad, and learn how to not write them. because when you Mary Sue character is not somebody you want to write. It's not a character you want to write, because when you write a Mary Sue character, it's basically a character that the audience can't relate to. It's a character that grates on the readers, and it really annoys them because they don't come here to hear this perfect person bragging about how great they are. They come to this story to be able to escape and then be able to learn something as they were escaping. And you have a Mary Sue character, they grate on you because they know everything. They can't make any mistakes. They have no flaws, and they're very irritating to just sit there and read. And that also with the woke characters, they're irritating to read because they come from that whole place of narcissism. They come from that place of I know better than you, I'm smarter than you. And nobody wants to read a character who's sitting there, who's supposed to be knowing better than me and smarter than me and superior to me. That's not somebody who people relate to, because, yes, you've gotten some sort of what you think is enlightenment, but storytelling is not about you telling me how enlightened you are or how better you are. It's about me learning how to be a better person from this person going through all of these hardships, this person going through all of these flaws, and dealing with whatever personal issues they have, and learning how to become a better person. But the woke person, they want to come to me and tell me how much better they are, but they don't really know anything about being better. But I'm hoping you can learn how to not write these characters, because as I see it, there are just too many of these characters out here, and these characters really, yeah, Patrick, they are like Doctor Doom. They come across as villains. They're not heroes. And people, the problem is that the woke person believes that he's a hero. He believes he's helping people with these characters, but people don't. The thing is that they're coming from their own personal perspective. But storytelling is not about you coming from what you think is better for everybody else. Is coming from, I made these mistakes in my life, I've had these failures, I've had these losses, and I want to show you why this went wrong, and then how I overcame all of these obstacles to get to better. For example, I started The Temptation of John Haynes out with the John Haynes character getting fired from his job. So I didn't come in from that just because I wanted to have an exciting plot point. I came in from that, from my own personal experience dealing with racism and intraracial classism as related to, these elite blacks thinking that they're better than other black people, and my numerous long-term periods of unemployment. I came from there, and I wanted to talk about, why this job was important to John, because he wanted to go out here. He wanted to go out here and prove himself. He wanted to show that he could do something good for people. And I came from that place because that's where I was drawing from my own personal experiences of, wanting to go out here, get that good job, be able to go out here and build something substantive, and go out here and help others. And I wanted to do that with this character. And I said, okay, here's this character. He wants to go out here and he wants to get this job to help others. And he's tempted by the devil with this job, but then he learns what's really important at the end of the story. And it's his example that inspires Easteen to do better. And it comes, again, good characters and their character transformation arcs, they come from the writer wanting to share with the reader and wanting them to learn something that will allow them to have a better quality of life and be able to have something that they can apply to their quality of life. But when you have people who are woke, they only think about themselves, but they don't think about the reader and what the reader is going to get out of that experience. Same thing with your Mary Sue writers, who think it's about them being a part of these characters' worlds, and not understanding that it's not about you having you being the center of these characters' attention. It's about those characters teaching you what you need to learn in order to go out here and be a better person and improve your quality of life. So that's something that neither one of them really get, because yeah, the problem is they have no true character development or hero's journey. And that's one of the problems with Mary Sue and woke characters, Mulbar 7170. They never really grow. They just stay in the same place, and then they solve all the problems automatically. And that, how does that go? I mean, for example, again, like the Star Trek example, Captain Kirk has years of experience as a captain. Mr. Spock has experience as a first officer. Dr. McCoy has experience. But Mary Sue, who's an ensign and has never really done anything, she's going to come in here and know more than a science officer, a medical officer, and a captain. And she's going to solve problems. And that's not good storytelling. That's you wanting to be the center of attention in somebody else's world, but you don't want to go out here and experience the hardships of your own world. And that's robbing the reader of a rating experience. And that's the big problem with the woke crowd, is that they just want to make these vanity projects that are all about them. And people don't buy, again, books. The audience doesn't buy books for a vanity project. They buy a book because there's something there that makes them care about it. And the only person who cares about a vanity book like a Gotham High is a selfish person like a Melissa De La Cruz or many of these woke writers out here. They're the only people who like their books. And that's why the phrase "get woke, go broke" is so true, because the only people who care about a woke product are the vain people who created it, because they didn't care about the audience. And that's one of the things that makes these books go broke. And Trex Colossal makes a good point. Yeah, they just use tokenism and these shallow methods to push these causes, but their support for those causes is very shallow, because they don't really believe in what they're doing. They don't believe in their story. And that's why it comes across as really shallow, because they aren't really passionate about it. They just want to see if they can get readers to go out here and buy this book because they say that they're for this cause. But when I look at the way they make their books, it's just pandering, because what they want to do is pander, hoping that, oh, if I'm for this cause, it'll get me readers. And if I show that I'm standing up for this platform, it'll get me an audience. But it's not going to get you an audience because, one, you're not coming from a place of genuineness. And two, you are just going out here and you are trying to beg to people. And that's what pandering really is begging. And when you beg for people, they don't respect your message because your message isn't genuine. Now, if your message is truly genuine, your readers are going to see it in the pages of your story. They're going to say, hey, this guy's message is genuine. He really cares about what he's writing. He really believes in what he's writing. And he's not trying to get brownie points. He's not trying to virtue signal. He's not trying to beg me to see how good he is. He's just going to go out here and say, look, I'm just going to put my story out here. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But this guy, he wants to pander, not understanding, again, pandering comes from a position of weakness. And when you come from a position of weakness, that's why nobody respects you, because you don't respect your own work. You don't respect yourself. And why should they respect you if you're going to come to me from a position of weakness? You always want to come from a position of strength. And good writers come from that position of strength because they understand that their message is important, and they are passionate enough about their message to stand up for that message because they believe in it. And again, they're coming from that place of writing because they want to give readers that story. And they want to give readers the best story because they're writing, like Neil Starrs made the point, they're writing objectively. And when you write objectively, you want people to get all the sides of the story, not just the side that makes you look good. And this is a big problem with Mary Sue and woke writers, is they always want their characters to look good because they don't have the confidence to understand that when your characters look bad, this is what really builds their character. What they want to do is see their characters always beating the bad guys or solving the problems. but they don't want to see them go through the hardships of getting beat up or losing. But that's what makes that character resonate with you. For example, with Spellbound, the scenes where Matilda gets beat up in the bathroom resonated with people. The scene in The Temptation of John Hayes where John Hayes gets fired resonates with people and gets racially profiled resonates with people. And these are things that make us look at these characters and say, this is a person, yes, they've got a problem, but what makes me relate to them is how they overcome the problems that are put in front of them and how they work towards solving the problems that are put in front of them. That's what makes them a hero to people. But your woke writers, they don't want to make your heroes go through anything. They just want to sit there and make the characters either all perfect, or they want to make it where the character is such a victim. But victims are not survivors. And what makes a hero is the fact that they can overcome and survive and go on to live a better life. So, yeah, that's true, Mulbar. All of them think that it's all about their vision and that their vision is the best, but no good writer out here thinks that way. Good writers understand that, yes, I have a vision for this character, but my vision isn't the only one that matters. It's going to be added to the tapestry as related to these characters. And it's important that I craft a story that allows people to see this lore and be able to become a part of this lore, and that my story is just another one in the tapestry. It's like each writer adds one part to the legend, and that builds the character overall, because good writers put the character first, but guys like Daniel Kibblesmith, Ryan Johnson, J.J. Abrams, it's all about them, but it's not about the characters and it's not about the audience. So that's one of the things. Yeah, that's what it sounds like, Patrick. It sounds like they want to bring it back for nostalgia and they want to pander to the audience. But X-Men, as I see it, ended very nicely. 90s X-Men ended well. I mean, they had a good finale. Just leave it there. It doesn't need you to come back and bring back these characters. Let that story stay. I mean, if you want to go back and revisit those characters in a new story, go ahead, but don't give them an ending that, for this diversity and wokeness. It's like, I don't want to see that. I want you to just let those characters stay. I don't want to see X-Men go out like Gargoyles with Goliath Chronicles, because Goliath Chronicles destroyed Gargoyles. I always thought season 2 on Gargoyles ended perfectly, but then they came back with season 3, and Goliath Chronicles, the less said about that, the better it is for everyone. So I know it's like there's a time when to end a story, and a lot of these guys, they don't want to end a story because the whole thing is that they're scared. And again, it's coming from that place of fear. They fear that if they bring back this old thing and they try to end it, they don't want to, because they don't want to do anything new, and they're afraid of taking a risk on something new. So they keep trying to bring back these old properties like Star Wars, 90s X-Men, trying to get the nostalgia crowd. But what they really need to do is have that courage to go out here and work on some new characters, work on some new concepts. I mean, that's something I had to do just last year when I was writing Eternal Night. I had to work with a brand new character, and it was a lot of work, but I wound up here and doing it. And I did the same thing in 2015 when I created Matilda Crowley. I had to come out of my comfort zone, and that's something that a lot of the woke writers and the Mary Sue writers don't want to do, is come out of their comfort zone. But writers, we have to come out of our comfort zone all the time, because that's how we create brand new characters, brand new concepts, and we make stuff that resonates with people, because we understand that, okay, I created this character. Now it's time for me to create something new. So we understand that we can't keep making stories with this same character over and over again, because the audience is going to get tired of that character. So you got to come out of your comfort zone and create something fresh and different. And sometimes creating something fresh and different, what it does is it allows you to really break out of your comfort zone, allows you to take on new challenges, and it allows you to really expand on your craft. Because I remember when I was just doing ISIS series books and I wanted to do Spinsterella, I said, I want to do something different. I want to do a different character. I want to do a different character model. And I came up with a whole new different character, whole different story model. And while it was scary in the beginning to start out with that character, it really helped me evolve in my craft, helped me to really learn how to write better characters and learn how to really write different types of character transformation arcs. Because after I did Spinsterella and I took that risk and really took those risks writing that Black Goth character, then I came back with Spellbound and wrote an even, as I see it, better book. And again, each time you do that, it allows you to develop your craft and it allows you to start facing your fears and allows you to really see that you can do more with storytelling. Mobar 7170, do I think that is, yeah, there's some social engineering in it and stuff like that because the woke crowd, what they want to do is push their agenda in these materials. They want to do it through imagery. They want to do it through the stories. But what happens is that people can see through it because they're so busy pandering and virtue signaling and coming from a position of weakness that nobody takes it seriously. Because when you go out here and you tell a story and you just are true to what you believe in, what's going to happen is people are going to relate to it. But when they try to do it with their social engineering, people can see through it. So that's one of the things that's happening with most media is they want to be able to get you to think a certain way, but with the woke people and the Mary Sue people, they want you to, they're so insecure about their message that they believe they have to convince you. And the only way they can convince you is if you're in complete agreement with them. And they have a very junior high school mindset as related to thinking. And that's why their work comes across as poorly done, very juvenile, excuse me, and very poorly crafted. So oftentimes, again, they want to try to engineer these ideas in your mind, but really good writers, we don't want to engineer any ideas in your mind. We're just going to put our stuff out there again, and you take it or leave it because we believe in our work and we say, okay, it is what it is, and you just go with what you want. I mean, these virtue signalers, they just all about trying to get you to. They want to convince you so bad that you can just see their insecurity. I mean, you see it on Twitter and social media. Whenever these people get challenged, they practically lose their minds. But solid writers, they're like, okay, you have that issue. I'm just going to move on. I mean, it's like, look, I got other projects to do. I got other stuff that I'm trying to finish. I finished this book. I'm ready to move on, do something else. And whatever issues you have with it, you have with it. But that's not my problem. I mean, that's what a good writer is going to tell you. Is like, look, I understand you have an issue with this character or this story, but this is the way I wrote it because I wanted to present a message about a certain thing. I mean, it is what it is. And I wasn't meaning anything personal. And I'm not trying to come from a place of being personal. I'm coming from my message. I mean, it's not like the whole thing is with the Mary Sue character, it is very personal because this is their person. Like with Rey from Star Wars, that was an avatar of Kathleen Kennedy. And it was all about Kathleen Kennedy making her Star Wars and telling her story. And that's why it just didn't come across as genuine. Whereas Luke came across as genuine because George Lucas wanted to tell a story about people coming together in a war to overcome an empire. Thank you, Kevin, for the super chat. I mean, that was one of the things I had about Gargoyle season 3. It just wasn't authentic, and you could see how the suits had come into it. But when I look at Gargoyle season 1 and 2, it was very genuine, and it was like I could see the commentary about Black people in between the lines with gargoyles and how they lost their home and now they lost everything, and how this white man had taken everything from them. It was a brilliant social commentary. But season 3 was like Goliath became this sellout, and it lost its message. And when you have, again, woke people, they want to be they want to be these writers. They want to be able to create this art, but they don't understand that there's a process to it. They don't understand that there is a craft to it, and they don't understand that in order to create that great literature and great art, you're going to have to go through some pain. You're going to have to go through some hardship. And that's the only way it's going to come across on the page, that you're telling a story that people can relate to because you've been through it yourself. You've experienced these things. And even if you didn't experience some of these things, there are things you can relate to that you can present as related to those points. And if you, like I did with Spencer, I did a lot of research on different things. So in order to make that story work, I knew some things about the goth scene. I knew some things, but I knew something more about being an introvert and how much of a challenge it was to be an introvert. So I came from that place as related to that romance because I wanted people to understand what an introvert was and what they deal with as related to those types of relationships and dating, and how their fears oftentimes are the thing that drive them to not go out here and do things. But as Matilda and the Quiet Man deal with their fears, they get closer. So again, when you're a writer, you want people to come out of the story learning something, but you can't learn anything from a woke book or a book with a Mary Sue, because the writers themselves, a lot of times they're young, they're inexperienced, they don't have, good skills, and they're just coming primarily from that emotion. And that's something that when I went back to writing in 1990, I had to learn to get out of. And by finally about 1999, I finally got out of that whole emotional phase. And I had to deal with my own personal fears and insecurities again, because when you're out here, you think, oh, people they don't hate your stuff. They just have issues with it because there are flaws in your stories. There are issues with your story. Now, some of it comes from your lack of experience as a writer. Some of it comes from your lack of experience with life. And when somebody is critiquing your work and telling you, okay, I have an issue with this, they're not coming from a position of hate. They're coming from a position of being an audience member who's sitting there seeing the plot holes in your story, the logic holes in your story, the lack of character development, and they're coming out of the reading experience or the viewing experience, and they're not very satisfied with that. And that's not something you want from your readers. You want your readers to come out of that experience saying, hey, I learned something from the story. I really enjoyed the story. But you can't enjoy a story when somebody is being a narcissist and wants to be the center of attention in somebody else's world, like a Mary Sue, or you're like a woke person and just sitting there trying to not only preach to people, but insisting everybody agree with your story and not come to their own observations and conclusions. Because good storytelling is about letting people not only learn the lesson, but draw their own observations and conclusions about the action and come to their own conclusions regarding how this story goes, how these characters are, and coming to their own observations about these characters, imagining these characters the way they want to imagine them, and not you insisting that your way is the only way. So the whole thing about, as I see it, is the ultimate lesson is learning, hey, this story, while you have written it, you have to share it with your audience, and you need to put your audience up there. And yes, it's your story, but you have to tell it in a way that allows the audience to come out of it learning something. So I look at a lot of these Mary Sue writers, a lot of them, they need teaching, they need guidance, and they need to come out of their own egos. So they need to come out of their egos and come out of their own arrogance, because writing is a process. It takes years to learn. And while some of these people have gotten published in their 20s and their 30s and they're bragging, oh, I got published at 20, you really don't know anything, and it shows on your page. And I see that with a lot of woke writers. I see that with a lot of Mary Sue writers that wrote a lot of this chick lit. They're coming from that place of inexperience, and sadly, they need somebody like an editor to pull them to the side and say, okay, this story, while you have good feelings about it, that those emotions are nice, we need to break this down so that this story is something that the reader or the audience can understand and can learn from what what they're supposed to learn in this story. So that's something, again, I'm hoping everybody learned something about how to not write Mary Sue's and how not to write woke characters from this stream. I'm going to get ready to wrap up the stream, and I would really appreciate it if you guys would donate to the either the super chat or the Cash App. So I'm gonna leave a link to the Cash App. I don't know what's going on with Patreon, but I really would hope you guys would pick up ISIS, the main event. It's coming out this Monday on Amazon.com on Kindle. But if you want to order the paperback, you can order the paperback. And this is a book you definitely don't want to miss, because this one picks up on story points in ISIS, the Ultimate Fight, ISIS, Power of the Princess, and ISIS, Imitation of Life. So you definitely want to pick this one up. And it's going to be out on Monday. And if you could pick up John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, which is now available in the Mike Williams regular version or the Josh Howard version, I would really appreciate it. These are the books of the SJS Direct 2020 catalog so far. And people have loved John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, and I'm hoping they enjoy ISIS, the main event, which you can still pre-order on Kindle, but you can get the paperback right now. And if you could pick up 2019's ISIS, All That Glitters, John Haynes, Dark Succubus, Eastine Goddess of, and The Temptation of John Haynes, I really appreciate it. All these books are great reading. They show you deeply flawed characters with great character transformation arcs. And you can also pick up the other books like Spellbound, The Thetas, and All About Marilyn, and All About Nikki. And all those books will show you great flawed characters that will show you how to avoid writing a Mary Sue. Thank you all. I'm glad you enjoyed the live stream, and I hope you'll be there tomorrow, not next week, for next week's stream.